Hello, welcome to Undisputed Boxing. We're back for a third video in one day. Just for a little bit of fun, Rick and I got together just to do our fantasy boxing fantasy card. So Rick is promoter and he's got an absolute barnstormer of a card for us. Take it away.
Well, when you say we've got together, we actually haven't heard each other's cards yet, have we?
No, we haven't. No, so I don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah, and I imagine we've got similar fights, or there will be a lot of crossover, I would have thought. But we basically said, these can't. It's a fantasy card more than fantasy fights. So these fights have to be possible to be made. So you can't have Joshua versus Holyfield or anything like that. We were like fights that are of this era that could be made, but unlikely to be on one card because I think this card would be 500 quid pay-per-view and it could fill several Wembleys, I would have thought. Well, I'd like to think so anyway. So I'm going to go 7 fights we've done, and I'm going to go down, from the main event, chief support, and then kind of go down, and I'll explain a little bit as I do it. My overall thing here was a lot of it are like mega fights that people want to see, but there are a few in here that I imagine some people wouldn't have, but they're just fights I'd like to see, and it's a little bit of lean towards British, I suppose.
Yeah.
Especially the further down we go. So the main event has got to be Joshua versus Fury. Now I know that's unlikely to happen because of what's going on, but it could happen down the line. But it's just, it's the heavyweight undisputed title. If it was to happen now, the Ring magazine, it doesn't get any bigger than that. Undisputed is always the biggest thing, but heavyweights is the biggest division, really. So it doesn't get any bigger boxing than that. And obviously for us and me, 2 Brits.
Yeah.
Chief support, that this is where, you could have, because this is in kind of order of what I'd like to see as well. So it's not just what fights, it's the order. This is where it's heavyweight again, but it is leaning towards the British side of stuff. And I'd love the chief support to be Wilder versus White.
Yeah.
I'd just love that to be a chief support, because it's, the main event's heavyweight, so chief support, to be heavyweight as well. And again, if there's anyone that follows in America, they'd probably be saying Wilder versus AJ or something like that, but that'll be mine. And then third fight would be Spence versus Crawford.
Yeah.
Very intriguing fight, obviously high level fight. It's not an undisputed, but it's a 3-belt unification. And, it is to decide the best in that division, which is a very, very hot division, probably the hottest or one of the hottest.
Yeah.
And just to show it doesn't have to be Brits in every fight.
Yeah.
Then I've gone to the 135 division, because that's probably the next hottest with the 4 or so kings. And I've just gone from, and I did do this before the Haney fight, but this doesn't change even what happened last night doesn't change my thinking. It's the fight I'd like to see out of all of that, and that's Tank versus Lopez. Mainly because, Tank is a wrecking ball, and he's going to be able to punch like hell, even stepping up into the weight. And we know Lopez is probably the best fighter in that division at the moment in terms of what he's the belts he's got. He's almost undisputed.
Yeah.
And I'd rather have Tank than Haney because of, I just think it'd be a better fight, and you're probably going to get a more chance of a knockout.
Yeah, agreed.
I couldn't have this card without Canelo in, because he's the pound for pound number 1 in my eyes. He's the biggest commercial fighter, but I'm struggling to get him into a fight that's above any of those, just because he's done all his competition away.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have had the Billy Joe Saunders fight a bit further up just because of being a Brit, but he's blown them all away. I don't, there's a debate of, should he fight a Charlo? But I don't know. I want to see him pushed even further. And I was thinking Bivol, but I went for Beterbiev. Yeah, just because I think he's the number 1 at light heavy.
Yeah.
So Canelo versus him, and then I did want some, biggish names as well on here. So, and again, you could argue this guy might be slightly past it, but it'd still be a great showing. So that's Charlo versus Triple G at middleweight.
Which Charlo? Jamel or Jamal?
I can never remember. The one that's already at middleweight.
That's Jamel. Jamal,
Yeah.
hang on. No, Jamal is at middleweight and Jamel is at light middle. They're both champions. Yeah. Okay.
And then the final one is probably, it's still a big fight because it's a unification, but it is leaning a bit more to the Brits. Would be a Coley versus Breedis.
Hang on a second. So you said Jamal versus Triple G. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. What was the last one?
A Coley versus Breedis.
Really?
Yeah. And again, that's the Brit in me probably want, because that's a unification at obviously cruiserweight.
Yeah.
But I mean, I imagine there's probably at least 3 or 4 that will match your card, I would have thought.
I'm looking at it now. There's actually only 2. But
I bet it's AJ Fury and Spence Crawford.
Well, I was going to say
I'll let
Spence.
You go anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go through mine.
Have you got any? Sorry, before you get on to yours, have you got any kind of criticism or like, well, that's a weird one, or can you see where I've come from?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I'm not dying to see a Coley Breidis, I'll be honest. I mean, I could probably give you 20 fights that I would rather see before I list a Coley versus Breidis. Just because I'm just trying to, because I looked at it as a fan, from a fan's point of view, in terms of like entertainment, what's going to bring like the most entertainment. And whilst I was really impressed with the Coley's last performance, he's not somebody that I would get up at, because I was just thinking, what would I get up at for 4 o'clock in the morning, which is a lot of the time what we have to do as Brits. All the big fights.
Would you not get up for? I get up for that fight easy at 3 o'clock in the morning.
A Coley versus
Breidis. Yeah, unification, cruiserweight, probably guaranteed a knockout.
I don't know. I'm just thinking fantasy, like your top 7. So it's not a criticism, just maybe I love Wilder versus White, of course, and I do like I do love Spence versus Crawford as well, for obvious reasons. But it's just very frustrating how that is just not even talked about happening, and it's almost like they're talking about any other fight apart from with each other. And the only reason I can think that is because it just doesn't really do that well commercially. And some boxing fans will scream at the screen with me saying that, but realistically, it probably does between 600 to 800,000 pay-per-view buys. If you're going off of previous pay-per-view numbers for both fights, yeah, but Spence is probably the biggest draw.
Where are them two going to get that from anywhere else? So that's my thing. That's why it surely must happen at some point.
Maybe it will happen, but it will just be one of those where it's like Mayweather Pacquiao and it's just way too late. But anyway, I omitted Spence versus Crawford from my fantasy card just to kind of make things a little bit more interesting, and because it was just a very obvious one.
Sorry, mate.
That's all right.
Let's hear your fucking card then.
Well, there was a real danger, because I do think that our points of view opinions are quite sort of similar, and I guess because we're just talking about it a lot, we don't really kind of debate too much. But all right, so without further ado, here's mine. So first fight, I'll go from the bottom up. Chocolatito versus Inoue. Just because I think that Inoue is crying out for a bigger challenge, and I just think Chocolatito would be that, and in terms of skill level, I think that would.
Is that Inoue stepping up? Oh wait,
I can't remember which. They're not the same weight now. He's already stepped up a weight. So Inoue won the WBC light flyweight, I think in his 6th fight or something ridiculous like that. And then he jumped up 2 weights to Superfly, won everything at Superfly, and he's now campaigning at bantamweight. Whereas Chocolatito, I believe, is at Superfly or Fly. So they'd have to do some sort of. I mean, look, they could get in the ring at the same weight. They'll probably do some sort of catch weight. But I think Chocolatito versus Inoue I think that would just be mouthwatering. Yeah, I mean, Inoue is like one of my favorite fighters at the moment. I just love watching him. I've watched so many of his fights so many times now, and his career is is pretty impressive. I just want to see him. I just want to see him in with somebody, really, really high level, and I think Chocolatito would be absolutely mouthwatering.
Yeah. See, now I love the sound of that fight, but if I had a choice of that fight or the Coley Breidis, it'd be a Coley Breidis. It's purely the British element.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess mine. Yeah, mine's probably geared more towards the hardcore. I'm not saying that I'm a boxing hardcore, by the way. I'm not. I don't have enough time to be a boxing hardcore to watch all of the, the small hall shows and all that kind of stuff. But from a skills point of view, I'd just love to see Chocolatito versus Inu. I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
Next up, Dillian White versus Andy Ruiz is mine. I think that would be a great clash of styles. I think it would be an all-out war. I just think that would be an all-out war. Not to, sort of sound like Eddie Hearn, but Andy Ruiz, we all know, loves to trade on the inside, got great, high skill. He's a high volume fighter as well. And I think he'd eventually catch White, And I think it'd just be over in 4 or 5 rounds. It'd be a shootout, but it'd be a real pick 'em as well. I mean, not many people would be, that 100% confident on where that goes. So yeah, White versus Ruiz in Vegas.
Judges wouldn't have much. The judges won't have much to do in that fight.
No, not at all. Next up, this is very British esque, but Joshua Buatsi versus Anthony Yard. Even though Yard has lost to Lyndon Arthur, I still think that's one of the biggest fights to be made in British boxing outside of Fury AJ.
It's weird that, because you've got that number, the fifth fight, and that in theory is not the same level as a Coley Braders.
What, White versus Ruiz?
No, the Buatsi Yard. It wouldn't be even for a belt.
Probably not. But I think it's an intriguing fight. Again, it's one of those. It's a pick'em. Like not. But
you'd have that higher up the card than White Ruiz.
I've not really given it that much thought. I mean, this isn't something that's going to happen. So it's just, I've just basically
meant to do it in order, mate.
Oh, I'm sorry. So
your second one's got to be, or your second to last, the way you're doing it, it's got to be what you say is chief support. Yeah,
well, I think chief support would be chief support. Anyway, let me finish. So Yard versus Buatsi, as I say, I still think it's a great fight. Yeah, I mean, who knows? Maybe we will still get that. Let's see how their careers unfold. Next up, Tank versus Lopez. I guess sort of echo, the sentiments that you said before. I think much more likely to see, sort of a knockout rather than, Devin Haney, who would be more of a box remover. I think Tank versus Lopez, I think, is a wonderful fight. And I think it's number 1 against number 2 in the lightweight division. It's just such a shame that I just don't think we're ever going to see that, to be honest. Next up, Jamal Charlo versus Triple G. So that's our second of the same. Jamel Charlo versus Canelo, chief support. I do still think of the Charlo brothers.
So hang on a minute. Sorry. So you're saying, I forget the names. You're saying the one that's, because one's at light middle and one's at middle. So you're saying the middleweight one fights Canelo and light middle fights Triple G. So they both move up a way.
The other way around. Jamal Charlo fights Triple G, and then Jamel fights Canelo. Jamel has actually already got a loss on his record, but I do still think he's maybe the better fighter. So he would step up to super middle.
The light middle will step up to super middle.
Yeah. I think. Yeah.
Would you not have the middle step up to?
Maybe, I don't know. There's something about the Jamel being the slightly more skilled, and I think that he would give Canelo the most problems. I mean, either of them would give them problems, but yeah.
It's just weird that, because we both needed Canelo on the card, because you can't. But I think it's like, who's going to give him the most trouble? And you've kind of gone down to quality below, and I'm almost going. I just think he deals too easy with anyone smaller, and so I've gone up.
When you say smaller, I mean the Charlo brothers are 6'1" or 6'2". They will tower over Canelo, and I think from a but Beterbiev, as good as he is, he's been put down by Callum Johnson. I think Beterbiev is going to be on the slide, and I think it's not unrealistic that Canelo might fight Beterbiev maybe next year. I think that the Charlo brothers are younger, fresher. They have the reach advantage. They've got the boxing skill. I'm just desperate to see them in with somebody of a high.
They have been beaten. Has Beterbiev been beaten?
Beterbiev, I don't think he has been beaten. Yeah. And the headline of this card, headline fight.
I think you've got AJ Wilder.
Yeah, AJ Wilder. Yeah, only because AJ versus Fury, as a great fight as it would be, I'll obviously be conflicted because they're both Brits, and there's something about, you know, that kind of World Cup kind of scenario where you're 100% back in one man. You've got everything invested into it. It would just be so exciting. American versus a Brit in Vegas, and I think that stylistically, it's a better fight. You know, it's just going to be two gunslingers going at it. You know, AJ Fury has every potential to be a bit of a low output, strategic sort of chess match. You know, Fury has got many different ways that he could approach the fight, whereas Wilder and AJ are a little bit more kind of simplistic in that way. And I think it's just going to be an all-out war, and it'll probably be over in like 3 or 4 rounds. But boy, would it be exciting! But yeah, that's
yeah. I mean, I think the only thing for me is that it's the fact that it's. You're right, because I do like it's two Brits, but there is something about just having yourself in fully one camp. But you can't call that an undisputed fight as it stands at the moment. And I think that would be the thing for me. It's almost that's the one of the biggest elements. So just going through yours, just putting it into an order, and if you want to change anything. So AJ Wilder, you did say the Canelo Charlo fight was your chief support, so you're happy with that as number 2.
Yeah. Yes.
What would be number 3? Because this was part of the fun for me, because you've got to think of like, because we could also do like, we won't do it, but you could say, right, who are your Facebook fights?
I've got a Facebook fight for you. I did think about this one. What about Babic versus Derek Chisora?
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Yeah. Got to throw Pricey in there somewhere as well.
Yeah, Pricey versus Babic. Yeah. There's every chance that could happen. That could end up on the fight camp, yeah. 3, I'd have Canelo chief support, Triple G versus Jamal, Tank Lopez, Buatsi Yard, Chocolatito Inoue, and then White versus Ruiz to start the night off.
See,
I think we're overthinking this, to be honest, but yeah, that's
all part of the fun. All right, babes. My criticism would be, not sure Buatsi Yard should be on the card at all. And I think White Ruiz should be a lot higher up.
Why? Just because it's the heavyweights?
I could probably live with it being at 3 or 4, but no lower.
Mate, you've got a Coley in, like, of all of the fights that you can make in the world, you've put a Coley on there. I think he's still got a bit more.
But at least hang on a minute. It's at the very bottom. It's the last fight. It's a Brit, but it is a unification at cruiserweight. It's not a shit. Buatsi Yard. I mean, it's like that's a weaker fight, really.
Not is it? I disagree.
Well, yeah.
I'd be
getting. It's not even a world title. There's not even a world title on the line. There may be one day, but I'm just going off the card and the razzmatazz. It's like, Yard's coming off a bloody defeat, but what's his name? So
off of Lyndon Arthur.
That's lost. That's lost. That's lost some pound signs on it just because of that.
It has, I guess, but I just think just because it's a world title fight doesn't mean it's going to be worth getting up for. I mean, yeah, I don't necessarily put all the emphasis on title fights, and
you can't put it all on, because like White Ruiz should be, that's a brilliant fight, and White Wilder at the moment, my chief support, that's wouldn't even be a title fight at the moment, and that's my chief support. So, but I don't know, I think you're really downplaying a Coley Bradis. It's not even a title fight; it's a unification. You've just got some kind of beef here.
I don't know. I think, look, I
can't believe you wouldn't get up in the morning for that either. Some of the shit you get up for in the morning, you wouldn't get up for that.
I'm trying to think of the last fight that I got up for that I was really disappointed with. I mean, I got it for Man United versus Villarreal. I was very disappointed with that. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just not mad on it. I mean, there's every chance the Coley Bradis actually happens this year.
Yeah.
But
well, it'd be good to hear from our viewers, see what they think, see if I'm losing the plot with the Cody Bradis or Abe's losing the plot with his Buatsi Yard circus. And the fact he's got White Ruiz as his, they've just barely scraped away from Facebook. starting, so half the crowd won't be there.
All right, well, just a bit of fun. Let's see what kind of response we get, and then maybe we could do something similar. But yeah, let's wrap it up. So next week we will review. Let's review Triple D's performance. So we're quite intrigued to see how he gets on. And then, do we have any other big fights coming up? What's happening after Triple D? Anything happening stateside?
And there's a Newcastle
preview.
card in June.
Teofimo Lopez Cambosos, I think, is on the 19th, so that's the week after.
Yeah, I mean, we got spoiled a bit. We've been spoiled in May, haven't we? Really?
Yeah.
There's a lot of fights in May because we did have like a slow start to the year and we were struggling for content a bit, but it's been good the last few weeks, and I think June's still good. But yeah, hopefully we'll hear what fight camps got on offer for July or August, whenever it is.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's wrap it up. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you next week.